I'm sorry, I have to know. Why am I handcuffed?
Are you injured? I don't know. Did you hit someone or did someone hit you? I don't know.
I can't. I have children. Were they walking? Were they on bikes? What? I don't understand because it was dark. I turned the corner.
You're under arrest right now for driving under the influence
I have to know.
and causing a traffic collision resulting in a fatal collision.
No!
Meet 57-year-old Rebecca Grossman, an LA socialite who just ran over two children at a crosswalk. She was illegally speeding in her white Mercedes-Benz, racing alongside her lover, former LA Dodgers star pitcher Scott Erickson, who was in an identical black Mercedes. The speed limit was 45 miles per hour, but Rebecca and Scott drove at almost double that limit. It's September 29th, 2020, and earlier that evening, Rebecca and Scott drank margaritas at a local restaurant. Afterwards, they climbed into their luxury cars and raced each other through Westlake Village, an affluent community in Los Angeles. Witnesses described their driving as a deadly game of cat and mouse. Meanwhile, Nancy Iskander and her husband Kareem were out with their 4 children. The Iskanders, originally from Egypt, are Coptic Christians. After months of COVID-19 restrictions, they were enjoying a simple family outing. Surely the quiet streets of Westlake Village would be safe. Kareem jogged ahead with their baby on a stroller. On the crosswalk itself, Nancy followed on rollerblades, her 5-year-old son Zachary by her side. Behind them were their 2 oldest boys, 11-year-old Mark on a skateboard and 8-year-old Jacob on rollerblades. They were in a wide, clearly marked, illuminated sidewalk, but without intersection lights. It was 7:10 p.m., and they had the right of way. That's when Nancy heard the roar of engines. She turned to see 2 cars speeding towards them. They were both coming at us at unbelievable speeds, Nancy later said. She waved her arms, desperately signaling for them to slow down, but the black car, Scott's car, kept coming. Nancy grabbed Zachary and pulled him close. The black Mercedes missed them by inches. Then came the white car, Rebecca's car. It veered to the far side of the crosswalk, where Mark and Jacob were. It didn't slow. It didn't stop. It hit them full force. Nancy could do nothing but watch as her sons were thrown into the air. Jacob's small body landed 50 feet from the crosswalk. I looked back, and Zachary, too, turned around to see the other car come and take them, Nancy said, struggling to hold back tears. Kareem Iskander heard the crash, followed by his wife's screams. He sprinted back to the crosswalk. When Nancy reached Jacob, she found him lying motionless on the ground. He looked peaceful, almost as though he was asleep. But Mark was nowhere in sight. He had been thrown an unimaginable 250 feet down the road, every bone in his body broken. My wife told me Mark got hit, so I ran about 50 steps and saw Jacob, Kareem said. At first, he didn't realize that both boys had been struck. When I told her it was Jacob, she said Mark was down the road. I looked around but couldn't find him. In the chaos, someone was already performing CPR on Jacob. At their instruction, Kareem turned to Mark and began mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. It was no use. Mark was pronounced dead at the scene. Jacob was rushed to the Los Robles Regional Medical Center where he would die hours later. Despite the obvious impact, Rebecca didn't stop. Her Mercedes-Benz, airbags deployed and front end mangled, kept going. According to the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office, her vehicle only came to a halt a quarter mile down the road when the damaged engine automatically shut off and triggered an emergency 911 call. The operator asked, "Ma'am, did you hit someone or did someone hit you?" Rebecca responded, "I don't know. I was driving down the road and suddenly my airbag exploded."
Are you injured? I don't know. Did you hit someone or did someone hit you? I don't know.
They tell me there's children involved. Please tell me what's going on.
I'm doing an investigation real quick.
I'm sorry, I have to know. I can't. I have children. I have to know. Were they crossing? Were they walking? Were they on bikes? What? I don't understand because it was dark. I turned the corner as soon.
When Rebecca was arrested, her blood alcohol concentration was 0.076, technically under the legal limit. However, a blood test later revealed a level of 0.08, indicating that her alcohol content was rising at the time of the crash, and she would have been unsafe to drive at the time.
Why am I handcuffed?
You're under arrest right now for driving under the influence and causing a traffic collision resulting in a fatal collision.
No!
Valium was also found in her system. Even at night, the black and white SUVs were clearly distinguishable. Yet, in the legal proceedings that followed, Rebecca Grossman, charged with vehicle manslaughter and more, would offer a very different version of events. In court, Rebecca Grossman's defense would later argue it wasn't her, but her lover, Scott Erickson, who ran over the boys. We'll get to that in a moment. Her attorney, Richard Hutton, released the statement, "Rebecca Grossman is a good and decent person who has dedicated her entire life as a mother, volunteer, and a founder of a nonprofit organization to caring for others. There has not been a single day in the last year since the accident that Rebecca has not thought about and prayed for Mark and Jacob and their family. But if Rebecca cared so much, why did she flee? And who exactly is Rebecca Grossman?" Rebecca Grossman was born on June 11, 1963, in California. She attended Texas Tech University before graduating from UCLA in 2002 with a degree in broadcast journalism. She married Peter H. Grossman, one of LA's most prominent plastic surgeons and the founder of the Grossman Burns Foundation. His father, A. Richard Grossman, established the renowned Grossman Burns Center, a highly respected medical institution. Rebecca took on the high-profile role as chair of the Grossman Burns Foundation starting in 2006. She also worked as a publisher and editor-in-chief of West Coast Luxury Publications, overseeing Westlake Magazine, West Luxury Magazine, and Paragon Healthy Lifestyle Magazine. Before that, she dabbled in the entertainment industry and even worked as a flight attendant. The Grossman's philanthropy earned widespread recognition. In 2007, Rebecca was named Woman of the Year by the American Heart Association. That same year, she and Peter were honored by the Haven Hills Foundation for their work in preventing domestic violence. On paper, Rebecca Grossman seemed untouchable, a respected figure, a humanitarian, a loving mother. You'd expect someone like her to stop, step out of the car, and try to help, not flee the scene of a crash that left 2 children dead. In early 2020, the Grossmans were living in an upscale gated community in Hidden Hills, nestled in the Santa Monica Mountains of Los Angeles County. Rebecca and Peter had 2 children, a teenage daughter and a middle-aged son. They also adopted Zubaydah Hassan, a young girl from Afghanistan who had suffered severe burns. Zubaydah's story brought the family national attention.
Well, the little girl who'd been given up for dead was now in the hands of angels who were determined to give Zubaydah back her smile. Look. When it looked as if she would have to return to Afghanistan before she completed her treatment, Dr. Grossman and his wife Rebecca welcomed her into their California home.
In 2002, Rebecca and Peter adopted her to provide life-saving treatment at their burn center. The media spotlight followed. Zubaydah appeared on Oprah, ABC Primetime, and Good Morning America. Her recovery was chronicled in the book Tiny Dancer. Rebecca's life appeared picture perfect. A seemingly strong marriage, a successful and rewarding career, 2 horses, 5 dogs, and a reputation as a model of society. But beneath that polished image, the cracks were there. By 2020, the cracks in the Grossmans' marriage deepened. Rebecca and Peter Grossman separated, and that same year, Rebecca began dating former Dodgers pitcher Scott Erickson. Returning to that fatal night, eyewitnesses reported seeing Rebecca's white Mercedes zigzagging at over 80 miles per hour through residential streets in Westlake Village. Scott Erickson's black car followed close behind, trying to catch up. Witnesses described the pair's driving as a dangerous game of cat and mouse. Even though it was twilight, just 6 minutes after dusk, the white and black Mercedes were clearly visible. After the crash, Scott Erickson, 52 at the time, was also arrested, charged with misdemeanor reckless driving. His case was quietly resolved in February 2021 when a judge ordered him to make a public service announcement towards high school students about the importance of safe driving. There's no record if Scott received a breathalyzer test. What's clear is that his PR team acted quickly and effectively to minimize the fallout. Rebecca's bail was set to $2 million. And while she was out, she seemed to be doing everything possible to delay the trial or throw out the charges completely. And despite initially claiming she didn't know she hit anyone, her car's data told a very different story. Rebecca's Mercedes had been traveling at 81 miles per hour for most of her trip. Just seconds before the crash, she briefly tapped the brakes, slowing to 73 miles per hour. However, there was no tire marks or signs that she made any attempt to stop or pull over. As if the Iskander family hadn't suffered enough, Rebecca's behavior in the aftermath stunned them further. She pleaded not guilty and blamed the crash on Scott Erickson. According to her, Scott struck the boys, then stopped his car, fled the scene, and hid in the bushes. There was even a sealed conversation between Rebecca and her estranged husband, Peter Grossman, in which she urged him to call Scott and convince him to confess on video. So much for lovers. Rebecca's conduct in court didn't help much either. She repeatedly failed to show up for hearings, 5 times to be exact, leading judge Shelley Samuels to issue a warning in September 2021 that a warrant could be issued for her arrest. Rebecca acted as if she was untouchable. Her legal firm filed motion after motion to delay the proceedings, one to dismiss all charges, another to reduce the charges to vehicular manslaughter. Both were denied. The judge instead found that Rebecca Grossman acted with implied malice, a far more serious crime than gross negligence. Implied malice refers to the depraved indifference to human life, even when there's no intent to kill. It's a legal definition that can elevate charges to second-degree murder. A prosecutor later compared the force of impact as dropping Rebecca's car from a 12-story building directly onto the boys' bodies. When Rebecca's long-delayed trial began on January 27, 2024, her defense team presented their version of events, a highly controversial, animated recreation. According to this version, Scott's black car struck one of the boys, sending them into the air, and Rebecca's white SUV hit them again as he fell. This recreation raised eyebrows, especially given reports that Rebecca allegedly wrote a letter to Elon Musk asking whether objects might have fallen from the sky that day. Nancy, watching the animation in court, called it a complete fabrication. Her testimony remained consistent. She recounted how the black car nearly struck her and her 5-year-old son Zachary. Evidence supported Nancy's account. Scott Erickson's black Mercedes showed no damage, while Rebecca's white Mercedes had significant dents and scratches on the front grille, consistent with the collision. Nancy had no motive to lie. Her account remained the most credible and consistent version of events. In one harrowing moment, the jury was shown photos of Mark's broken body lying in the street. Nancy couldn't take it. Overcome with grief, she wailed and ran from the courtroom. Nancy sat through hours of gut-wrenching testimony, a burden made heavier by Rebecca Grossman's refusal to admit guilt. Prosecutors described it as an excruciating ordeal for the family, made worse by the relentless delays and courtroom antics from Rebecca's legal team. The evidence, including vehicle diagnostics, pointed clearly to Rebecca Grossman, yet she pled not guilty. Nancy recounted the moments after the crash in haunting detail. One of the boys was struck so forcefully she never even saw where he landed, and as the white Mercedes sped away, she takes her phone out and starts taking photos of the scene for the police. The prosecutors feared that their case against Rebecca would be weak because Scott Erickson was let off the hook in exchange for just speaking to high schoolers. However, the prosecutors did have an ace up their sleeves when they presented a 2013 speeding ticket that Rebecca received. The ticket wasn't just a record of her prior reckless behavior. During the stop, the officers repeatedly warned her that speeding could kill someone. Rebecca's response? She allegedly made a snide remark, saying something like, "Good luck getting treatment for burns if you ever need it," a reference to her role as chairman of the Grossman Burn Center. This exchange highlighted her blatant disregard for human life, a disregard that mirrored her actions that night of the crash and her refusal to take responsibility afterwards. Her behavior in court, pleading not guilty and delaying proceedings, only reinforced the prosecution's case of implied malice. Meanwhile, the Iskanders' family's grief was immeasurable. Nancy and Kareem spoke of their sons with heartbreaking tenderness. Mark, the 11-year-old, dreamed of becoming a neurosurgeon or a comedian. a boy full of life and promise. Jacob, 8, was his mother's bodyguard, fiercely protective and loving. Kareem Iskander, holding back tears, said, "I wish you were here to make wonderful things like you always did. I've always been proud of you, and I'm still proud of you." Nancy shared how the family leaned on faith to endure the daily heartbreak. "We continue to pray every day, justice will come, because maybe God is just waiting for the right people to come at the right time, in the right way." She added, "September 29 will be another day of crying." The community rallied around, offering support to the Iskanders. Strangers sent gifts, prayers, hugs. Nancy described how the kindness brought moments of warmth to their otherwise unbearable grief. Zachary got presents for Christmas from people we don't know. People just showed up to give us hugs. It's heartwarming. The verdict was delivered on February 23, 2024. Rebecca Grossman was convicted of the following charges: 1 count of murder for the death of 11-year-old Mark Iskander, 1 felony count of vehicular manslaughter with gross negligence for the death of 8-year-old Jacob Iskander, 1 count of hit-and-run driving resulting in death. The court ordered Rebecca to pay $47,000 in restitution to the victim's family. Yet, even after being found guilty, Rebecca hoped for probation. Her legal team anticipated a lighter sentence, but on June 10, 2024, they were shocked when she received 15 years to life in prison. At sentencing, Rebecca delivered an apology to the Iskander family, claiming, "God knows I never saw anybody." Rebecca wrote a really bizarre letter to the Iskanders. Instead of apologizing, she said had she seen their kids, she would have swerved her car into the bush. She also reached out to NASA and SpaceX, asking them if some objects fell out of the sky that evening.
Mrs. Grossman never said, "I am sorry for what I did." She only said, "I'm sorry for what happened to you." That is not an apology.
We were seeking 34 years, and we wanted it to be consecutive, which means that she would have been in prison for 30 years plus the 4 years for the hit and run. The court made it concurrent.
A week later, Rebecca Grossman was transferred to the Central California Women's Facility, where she now serves her sentence. In honor of their sons, the Iskanders created the Mark and Jacob Iskander Foundation, a program that supports undeserved children, helping them reach their full potential academically, socially, and psychologically. If you would like to support their mission, you can donate using the links in the description below. Reflection. Some tragedies remind us how quickly privilege can become a shield, hiding accountability behind wealth and influence. But justice, though delayed, can still find its mark, reminding us that the measure of someone's character isn't in their titles or accolades, but in what they choose to do when no one is watching. I'm your humble host, Victor. Remember to drop a like and subscribe with the bell icon to get notified of upcoming cases. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.